Hey sports fans, and welcome back to another episode of EBC Sports International. I'm your host, Zarita Sese, coming to you from Toronto, Canada. And of course, I could never do this show alone, so let's see who we have on the panel for today's show. From Seattle, Washington, we have the Michael Hudson.
What is going on, Z? And what is going on, everybody? Let's get started. NBA playoffs are hot. Let's get the show started, baby.
From Alexandria, Virginia, we have Mr. EJ Gonzalez.
What up, Zarita? Loving that background behind you. Say hi to the daughter for us.
Yeah,
so cute.
She's gonna make an appearance. And lastly, we have a probably very heartbroken PJ Hughes from New York.
Hi guys. Little bit heartbroken right now, but you know what? Heat culture, we bounce back. Let's get right into it. I'm ready.
Oh, you're not showing off the Miami Heat flag this time.
Flag.
Not today.
He took it down. He took it down right when they lost. So as always, we want to remind you all that though we are very passionate about our takes, we are by no means experts, and we are just a group of friends who like to talk about sports. So before we get into our main topics for today's show, we do have some updates from the sports world. First, we have EJ with an update about one of the most anticipated returns in the NBA world.
Yeah, thanks, Zarita. So if we can recall the blockbuster trade that happened at the trade deadline this year, the biggest headline was the swap between the Sixers and the Nets, where Brooklyn ultimately let go of James Harden and acquired Ben Simmons, Andre Drummond, and Seth Curry. Now, Ben Simmons has yet to suit up this season, even for the Nets, but it looks like he can be making his season debut in this playoff round between the Celtics and the Nets. Simmons' status is day-to-day and has already been ruled out for Game 3, but the Nets are hopeful for Simmons to step foot on the court for Game 4 and contribute around 10 to 15 minutes, according to sources. Now, Brooklyn is in danger of falling into an 0-3 hole to the Celtics, and although he hasn't played or even practiced with his teammates much, Ben Simmons says he's not worried of being able to fit in with Kyrie and KD. Back to you, Zarita.
Thanks, EJ. We're definitely going to talk about the Brooklyn Nets later on in the show. But moving on, now we have Mike with an update about the new big name that may be on the move in the NFL. What do you have, Mike?
Thanks, E. Appreciate it. So Debo Samuel, the Debo Samuel saga has officially gone to another level for the San Francisco 49ers. And Samuel, who is one of the top offensive weapons in the NFL, has asked the organization to trade him. This is after no agreement for a contract extension has been reached, and Samuel has refused to join in on the team's voluntary offseason workouts. It's not clear if the 49ers actually offered a contract to Debo, but it's safe to say that as of right now, he wants out. So many have said that Samuel has wanted to be the highest paid wide receiver in the league, especially seeing the wide receiver market taking a huge upswing as far as market value goes after Devontae Adams signed that huge $142.5 million deal with the Las Vegas Raiders. And then also Tyreek Hill, the former Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver, signing that $120 million deal with the Miami Dolphins. Throughout his 4 seasons in the league, Debo has only made a total of $6 million because he's still on his rookie contract. Many have said that this trade request has nothing to do with the money, but it's his usage. Samuel was a second round draft pick in the 2019 draft. And he was the most premier wide receiver on the 49ers these past 3 years. And this year, he had taken a multitude of snaps at the running back position, which is why he was one of the most dangerous offensive weapons in the entire league. So I know that right now the 49ers phone is probably ringing off the hook with possible trading partners, but I'm sure nothing will be concrete until after next week's NFL draft. Back to you, Z.
Thanks, Mike. That's another one that we'll definitely break down later on in the show. And lastly, PJ has an update about another retirement within the NCAA world. What do you have for us, PJ?
That's right, Zarita. So Mike Krzyzewski's retirement came as no surprise to many. However, the same cannot be said for Villanova's Jay Wright. Word of Jay Wright's looming retirement surfaced Wednesday, April 20th, and today he made it official. Jay Wright has coached for 28 years and has been the coach of the Villanova Wildcats for the past 21 years. Now, in those past, 2+ decades of solid coaching, And basketball, Wright led the Wildcats to an overall record of 717 wins, 520 losses. That's a winning percentage of about 73%, including countless NCAA tournament appearances with numerous trips to the Final Four, including this year, multiple Big East Coach of the Year awards, Naismith Coach of the Year award, and 2 NCAA championships, one in 2016 and one in 2018. Now, added to this astounding resume, Wright helped develop prime NBA talent, including your boy, Kyle Lowry, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, who we've seen go off for the Dallas Mavericks, Sadiq Bey, and Dante Cunningham. Now, while Jay Wright's decision came as a surprise to many, Wright knew early on in the season that this would most likely be his last. Wright reflected, saying that he lacked the same edge that he had in the past. In fact, oftentimes during the season, he recalled having to give himself pep talks before practices and workouts to bring that same energy that he had in the past. Wright knew it would only be his last run at the Final Four. And according to an article on ESPN, when everyone knew of Mike Krzyzewski's looming retirement, it created some awkward moments for Wright because he knew that what Coach K was going through and what he was thinking, except for Wright's situation, he couldn't really tell anyone. Wright leaves the Wildcat program in the capable hands of Kyle Neptune, who assisted Wright as a video coordinator in the early 2010s, and most recently led Fordham to an overall record of 16-16, 14 more wins than their previous season. Now, to end this update, I quote Jay Wright in an excerpt according to ESPN, in an article written by Myron Metcalf. The greatest thing for us has always been to just be the coach at Villanova. Accolades and winning games is not as big as being the coach at Villanova. We've always been part of a great tradition, and we've been blessed to be the head of that tradition for 21 years. We've also said, we don't own this, we just got to be in charge for 21 years. Back to you, Zarita.
Thanks, CJ. And I'm sure there's a lot of NBA franchises that want him as their head coach, but I think he said he's not interested in coaching. So too bad for them. Well, anyways, that's all the updates that we have for this week. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to go into all things NBA. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and thanks for sticking with us. I'm your host, Zarita Sese. So we are well underway for the first round of the NBA playoffs, and while some of the matchups are going back and forth, there are some that can end in one game. And I'm not going to talk about it any further. I'm not going to mention any teams. But the Golden State Warriors and the Philadelphia 76ers can move on to the next round with one more win as they are dominating their opponents 3-0. I refuse to acknowledge who the opponent is. The Chicago Bulls did the unthinkable the other night against the reigning champs, Milwaukee Bucks, by stealing one game in Milwaukee, with DeMar DeRozan playing out of his mind. Shout out Zolty, wherever you are. And just last night, there was an insane comeback from Memphis Grizzlies to get ahead of the Timberwolves. But with great play comes some troubling news when it comes to injuries. It was reported this week that Devin Booker of the Phoenix Suns will be out 2 to 3 weeks due to strained hamstring. You have Chris Middleton of the Bucks out due to a sprained MCL and taking him out indefinitely. And today, of course, we heard about Joel Embiid that may have a torn ligament in his thumb, but the 76ers are listing him as available for Game 4. And of course, you still have Luka Doncic out for the Dallas Mavericks with the calf injury, and also Scotty Barnes for the Raptors, who left Game 1 of this series early due to a sprained ankle. So I'm going to get right into it. Mike, let's start with you. Which series has been the most surprising for you?
Oh, man, where do I start? You know, for me, I'm going to have to go with the Mavericks in Utah because, guys, how many times have we seen the Utah Jazz underachieve every single year? I don't know if it's something in the water or something, but it's like ever since, I mean, even the days of Malone and Stockton, I mean, it's just like every time they have all this great talent, and then when they get to the playoffs, they just totally disappear. I just do not get it. I mean, even the Game 1 that they won against the Mavericks, they did not look impressive at all. Let me read you some stats, guys. So currently, don't get me wrong, Donovan Mitchell is playing well. He's averaging 32 points a game. But you're looking at their 3-point percentage. They're one of the top 3-point teams. They're only shooting 34%. And then they're turning over the ball way too much. But one of the biggest disappointments right now is just Mike Conley. I mean, he's been known for one of the best defensive guards in the NBA for 10 plus years, and he cannot handle Brunson and Dinwiddie. I just do not get, like, how can these guys not guard these backup guys? I don't get it. I mean, don't get me wrong, Dinwiddie is an amazing player. I think he's probably one of the most underrated players in the NBA, actually. So I'm not surprised about that. But 41 points from Jalen Brunson. Are you? I'm speechless. I'm just so disappointed because every single year you keep hearing the hype. You have Rudy Gobert, the Stifle Tower. You have all these guys on Utah, and it's just like it's the same story over and over again. And when Luka comes back, I mean, they're just gonna put the nail in the coffin for good. But I think the biggest disappointment has been the head coaching for Utah. I mean, if they lose this series, he's for sure out of a job. Snyder's gone. And it just shows how great of a head coach Jason Kidd is. I mean, he definitely knows playoff basketball. I mean, he's obviously won a championship, and he's prepared his team better than Utah has. So I would definitely say that series.
Well, then a follow-up question to that then, Mike. The same question. What happens to Utah if they lose this series out the first round? Aside from the Snyder potential firing, what's another thing that you might see with this team?
Well, I think at this point you're just gonna have to blow them up. I mean, I don't know if you try and
weird
trade.
To see. Yeah,
I don't know if you try and trade Mitchell and try and get some pieces out of him, because obviously you get a huge return. But I think Conley's gone. He's just, I don't know if it's injuries. I don't know if it's just desire to play, but his play has just totally diminished these past few years. You know, people were thinking that was going to be a huge addition for Utah, but you know, he just has not delivered. I mean, reading another stat, I mean, he's averaging what? Right now he's averaging 11 points per game. I mean, he's used to averaging 20 plus when he was with the Grizzlies. I mean, this guy was one of the top 3 point guards in the entire league. But I mean, you could still build around Bojan Bogdanovic has been playing really good. I mean, he's probably been the most consistent offensively and defensively. So you can build around him. But I mean, yeah, at this point, you're just gonna have to cut your losses.
Yeah, definitely something's going to look different for sure. EJ, just really quickly, I know your hands might be tied for this playoffs, but what's been the most surprising series for you throughout the
No, I was going to go with the Dallas Mavericks and Utah Jazz as well, but Mike definitely touched every point that I wanted to make. So the other surprising series for me is actually the Boston Celtics and the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, it hasn't been since 2010 since a 7 seed has beaten a 2nd seed, right? And people really thought that the Brooklyn Nets would not be the 7th seed, but rather the underdogs would be the Celtics, because Brooklyn has KD and Kyrie. I mean, it's insane how good the Celtics have looked on defense, shutting down KD. I mean, I haven't seen KD struggle like that. I think he made 4 field goals in game 2. Still finished with 20 plus points, which is crazy to me. You make 4 field goals and still finish with 20 plus points. The dude is a scoring machine, right? But he has not been able to figure out what to do to get around that Celtics pounding defense. And we talk about future of the NBA, man, to me, Jason Tatum is at the top of that pedestal. That dude can be the front image of the NBA, because this guy has looked so good. He's been clutch. I mean, look, that game 1, was it game 1 or game 2? I think game 2 was his buzzer beater, right? Game 2 was
game 1.
Against Kyrie.
Oh, it was game 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, game 1. His buzzer beater at the end of the game, insane. I mean, to have that type of footwork in closing seconds, didn't need to dribble the ball and spun around his defender to make that layup. I mean, the dude is legit, and he's always been since they've been drafted. I think number 1, the first draft that year, I can't remember, but it was definitely Lonzo Ball before him. And I always say that the Lakers screwed it up when they didn't draft Jason Tatum. Ken would argue it's okay because they won a championship after trading Lonzo Ball to get that final piece and to get AD over. But I mean, to me, Jason Tatum, definitely the front image of the NBA in my opinion in upcoming years once LeBron decides to retire. And he's blocked KD twice this series. I don't know how many times KD has been blocked mid jump shot, and clean.
Never seen.
I mean,
never seen.
Tatum is looking great offensively and defensively, and to me, the Nets are in trouble. The Nets are in trouble from they could definitely go down 0-3. Hey, Ben Simmons is on the way back. That doesn't matter to the Celtics, especially if he's only going to be contributing 10 to 15 minutes. In my opinion, though, they could benefit from Ben Simmons. The Nets could, because the ball handling, especially at the end of the quarter when it comes to the Nets, it's been for some reason in KD's hands. But he's been struggling the whole time. They still forced it on him in the fourth quarter, and he had to try and find his shot. So if somebody else is handling the ball, maybe KD has some better looks. But for the most part, they look like they're in trouble, the Brooklyn Nets. And I think that's the most surprising part of these playoffs for me.
Yeah, aside from the Heat, I think Boston's one of the most well-rounded team in this playoff, and I'm like, that's a clear winner of who moves on. But speaking of the Brooklyn Nets series, so that's another surprising one for me too, just because who would have thought that Brooklyn Nets, KD would have to play into the tournament and then go down 2-0.
Yeah.
So PJ, I'm going to go to you on this. So what does it say about the Nets and then that Kyrie KD duo? I think Wright of one of the shows on ESPN said this might be the most talented duo to fail in the playoffs. So yeah. So what would it say about the Nets if they do lose or even get swept in the first round?
I think the only thing it's really going to say about them is that they lost to the better team. When you compare roster, each spot, 1 through 15, the Celtics are just deeper. And just to kind of piggyback off of what EJ was saying, Jason Tatum is kind of that late 90s or 90s, early 2000s, superstar that you love who does it on both ends of the floor. Because a lot of superstars nowadays, it's just one-dimensional. It's just offense, offense, offense. You got somebody that's willing to do it on both ends. Somebody that's going to give you, 20, 30 points a game, plus lock down the best offensive threat on the opposing team. And I said this earlier, or before on this show, and I know it's super cliche, but defense is going to win championships. And to me, in this playoffs, the Boston Celtics are probably the scariest team to face right now because of their defense. Now, in regards to the Nets, you can't. I feel like they had a bunch of injuries throughout the course of the year. Obviously, they had a debacle with James Harden. There's a whole bunch of inconsistency. You didn't have Kyrie. There was times where Kyrie would go off for games, dropping 50, 60 points. But we haven't seen Kyrie play consecutive games. During that span where he was having those, crazy outputs, it's on 4 days rest, 6 days rest, because he couldn't play in certain places, especially at home. Now you have a better understanding of you need more than just KD and Kyrie. And I think that's what a lot of people are starting to realize. So I feel right now, the only thing that'll say about the Nets in the long run is that they lost to the better team, which would be Boston in this case.
Hey, PJ, I had a quick question for you because you're touching up on Kyrie. How much do you think it's him doing the Ramadan? Because I know if for the viewers that don't know what it is basically he can't eat or drink from sunrise to sundown. And so do you think that has do you think that's a reason why he couldn't play that well in game 2 and probably
I'll say this because in game 1 he played pretty well in game 1 if I recall correctly. Game 2, I think it's just one of those things where it's one of those games. Obviously it's hard. I don't know about you guys. I've done intermittent fasting. I do it now, and I can't work out or do anything until I eat something first. So imagine playing you're playing 2 quarters of an NBA game against elite athletes before you can have your first, bite of something. And it can't even be a full meal. Like it's a banana, like an orange, finally you get some water in your system. So it's definitely going to be hard. I don't know if it's like a huge contributor, because at the end of the day, like you still have guys like Patty Mills, you have Seth Curry, you have KD, who is arguably the greatest scorer in the league right now. So I feel like there's kind of no excuse. And you've done it throughout the course of the year without Kyrie in certain situations. So I feel like at the end of the day, they're just losing to the better team.
For sure. So moving on, EJ, I listed all the injuries that all these teams are going through. So from the injury updates that we've received, which team do you think will miss their injured player the most?
I was going to say that Luka Doncic would be missed the most, but Dallas is crushing Utah right now, man. I mean, they look great. So, I mean, now when it comes to somebody has lost the star, who has the better who has an advantage now as an opponent to that team? I think that it's the New Orleans Pelicans. Losing Devin Booker, we've seen how well Devin Booker was able to lead the Phoenix Suns in the regular season without Chris Paul. This time Chris Paul's there, but again, he's always battling injuries, so he could also get injured at any point. Devin Booker is the anchor for that team. He's the one that makes them go. And I mean, we saw that halftime buzzer beater where he dapped up the baby. It was an amazing shot. But I mean, after that, he didn't really look the same. And obviously the Phoenix Suns are not going to look the same without Devin Booker on the court. And I think the New Orleans Pelicans has enough talent on their team to be able to take advantage of the Phoenix Suns. And can you imagine an eighth seed defeating a 1 seed? That's how good the New Orleans has been looking in this series. They were already able to steal 1 game, and now they lose Devin Booker. I think that they have a better opportunity now, and Devin Booker is the star that's going to be missed the most.
No, for sure. Yeah, that's a gut punch for sure. Mike, I'm going to go to you for this question, kind of off script here, but does the Golden State Warriors Nuggets series and the Philly Toronto series go any further than Game 4? Or do you think it's a clean sweep? Let's move on to the next round.
Since I love you, Zarita, I'll go with, I think, Toronto had that Game 1. I mean, to be honest with you, they played the game really well, and just, not having Barnes there, gosh, they would have so
Gary
much of
Trent was sick,
and so, honestly, I think they win. I think they win Game 4, just because they're a pretty prideful team, and Embiid, they're saying that he has injured ligaments in his hand, I guess you could say. So they're still debating if he's going to sit out or he's not going to be 100%, obviously. But with the Warriors, dude, they are the team to beat right now. I'm telling you, Jordan Poole. Who would have saw this coming at the beginning of the year? I mean, this guy is an absolute. He's basically a better version of Westbrook, in my opinion. I mean, because the guy has limited or unlimited range from 3, and he can play defense. So, yeah, I think Warriors finish it off, but I think Toronto will win Game 4.
I know you're just saying that to me, Mike, so I appreciate that. That makes me feel better. And then just to close things off really quickly, guys, EJ, let's start with you. What is round 2 looking like for you? Who's matching up with who?
Well, I definitely think Dallas is going to win, go into round 2. Now that Phoenix and New Orleans Pelicans, I'll still go with Phoenix being able to take care of business. I think it'll be a little bit more difficult though. So I see them there. Golden State, obviously, and I got Memphis beating Minnesota out in the West. Memphis, that comeback from last night shows their heart, their grit. So it's definitely there. And then for the Eastern Conference, I got Miami. I got Philly, sorry. And then I got Milwaukee, and I think Boston. I don't think Brooklyn makes it out of the first round.
Ooh, hot take. PJ, really quickly for you, what is your second round looking like?
So for the West, I'm gonna have Dallas versus Golden State. Is that right?
No.
Sorry. Phoenix versus Dallas. I'm gonna have Phoenix versus Dallas, and then I'm gonna have Golden State versus Memphis. That's for the West. For the East, I'm gonna have Boston versus Milwaukee, and then I'm gonna have Miami versus Toronto. I know, like, it's a long shot, but think about it.
Toronto.
They had game one.
Okay, you're on the show every week.
It took a huge three by what's his name, Embiid, to win, game three. So I think the Toronto can still pull it out.
They're down 0-3, PJ. They're down 0-3.
They just need to win one, and then it's 3-1, and that's been done before, like Victor said. And of course, Mike, what is your second round looking like?
I have for the West, I'm gonna go, Golden State and Memphis, and then who's playing again? Oh yeah, Phoenix and Dallas, and then you have Miami. Miami, and then I think Brooklyn's gonna pull it off. I think Brooklyn is gonna be a rematch again. Brooklyn against the Bucks, second round.
Ooh, that'd be nice.
Interesting. All right, guys. Well, PJ, I like your answer the most, but thanks for your takes, guys. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we return, we're gonna continue with our NBA talk. So EBC Sports International will be right back. Welcome back, and you're watching EBC Sports International. So in the midst of the playoffs, the NBA released their finalists for the NBA awards, with one of them being awarded already. So we're going to throw up a graphic that shows you all of them, but just really quickly, Coach of the Year finalists, you have Taylor Jenkins of Memphis, Eric Spoelstra for Miami, Monty Williams for Phoenix. Most improved players, you got Darius Garland, John Morant, DeJounte Murray, which is funny that John Morant is now most improved player when there were talks of MVP at one point. Sixth man of the year, you have Tyler Hero, Cam Johnson, Kevin Love. Shout out Kevin Love, still kicking around. Rookie of the year finalists, you got Scotty Barnes, Evan Mobley, Cade Cunningham, and most valuable player finalist from Denver, Nikola Jokic, Philadelphia, Joel Embiid, and of course, the Giannis Antetokounmpo. And defensive player of the year, Marcus Smart of the Boston Celtics has already won, but the finalists were Mikal Bridges and Rudy Gobert. So we're going to start it off with defensive player of the year, since again, it's already been awarded. He was the first guard to receive this award since Gary Payton in 1995-1996 season. So EJ, how do you feel about Marcus Smart being named Defensive Player of the Year?
Hey man, shout out to the guards. They won the respect back. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Gary Payton who also announced the award to Marcus Smart. So how cool is that? How cool is that to have a guard, the last guard to win Defensive Player of the Year awarded to the new reigning Defensive Player of the Year in Marcus Smart. Hey man, Marcus Smart has always been that defensive catalyst for the Boston Celtics. He finally got recognized for it. Mikal Bridges, a close second. I mean, he was also very, very good for the Phoenix Suns this year, and even led them to a number one seed, or helped lead them to a number one seed. But hey, I'm glad that Marcus Smart and guards in general are getting the respect that they deserve. I mean, year after year, it's always a big man,
Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, and namely Rudy Gobert, which I really never understood, because I think he plays more help defense than anything. These guards, they're playing man defense, and sometimes, with this non-positional basketball, they're guarding some big men. Sometimes they guard a 5, sometimes they guard a 4. So the guards definitely needed recognition. And hey, Marcus Smart, I have I've had my doubts of I think the last one who got recognized as a guard was Eric Bledsoe, and I never understood why he was always being a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. But Marcus Smart, hey, I have no contentions between of that award. So kudos to Marcus Smart.
Yeah, I'm not mad either. But I have a specific question about Miami Heat. So I'm going to go to PJ for this one. So Bam Adebayo, I think, came out and said he felt snubbed that he wasn't even named a finalist. Do you agree with that statement from Bam?
So here's the thing. To EJ's point, right? I will say this about Bam Adebayo. he's one of the few bigs who can literally guard 1 through 5. He can guard a smaller guard. In game 1, you saw him lock down Trae Young. He's able to do it, and he can do it consistently. However, is it really a snub? I'm not too sure, only because of the fact that he missed so many games this year. I feel like if he played at least 5 to 8 more games, then maybe be in the conversation, maybe replace Rudy Gobert. Because personally, I'm tired of hearing Rudy Gobert's name in it.
Yeah.
But I saw if that were my argument, I would say at least like in the 3rd slot. But aside from that, I just think he played too few games. So I'm sorry. Even though I'm a Heat homer, I can't. I don't think he was snubbed. I think it was the right call.
Well, speaking of snubs or any other names in that list that you're looking at, PJ, that you're surprised by, maybe some that you're looking for when it comes to the finalists?
Oh, absolutely. So for me, it's the category for most improved player.
Yeah.
Jordan Poole, the third Splash brother. From the start of the season, all the way up, Clay wasn't there, and then all the way up until now, what he's doing in the playoffs. I mean, the man was in the G League a year and a half ago, and then now he's contributing to a championship contender in meaningful minutes and dropping meaningful points in a game. I feel like, in regards to the other players like Darius Garland, you heard other NBA players talking about him, like, oh, he's going to come up. DeJounte Murray, maybe not so many people were talking about him, but Jordan Poole, nobody was talking about Jordan Poole at the beginning of the season. Nobody would have thought about that. So I think he was a snub for most improved player, honestly.
Interesting. Mike, I know you had one offline when we were talking about potential finalists for Coach of the Year. Who was your snub for that?
For Coach of the Year?
I think you mentioned, was it
Willie Green? Oh, yeah. Willie Green, absolutely. I mean, obviously, the only reason why he's not here is because, they finished, 10th in the West, essentially, or 9th or 10th in the West, essentially. So that's the sole reason. But what he's doing with the Pelicans right now, what he did, how they played against in the play-in tournament, and then right now against the Suns, they're going to be a team to be reckoned with the years to come, especially if Zion decides to stay and discipline himself and lose I think I said gain 70 pounds. You're talking about me every time. Yeah. So if he loses the weight and he's committed and he buys into vision and what Willie's doing, they are going to be a team to be reckoned with in the West.
Hopefully Willie's like that anchor for some stability in that organization, because everyone knows they need some. But moving on to Rookie of the Year, Mike, this one's one that's highly debated between the 3 finalists. So when you're looking at potentially Rookie of the Year, what are you taking into consideration when it comes to who gets this award?
Well, for me, it's all about impact, right? And I think, players that play both sides of the floor or who thrive on both sides of the floor are always going to get my vote. So for me, that's why Scotty Barnes would be in the lead for me, just because he has the size. He's not afraid to guard the other team's best wing player. And he was playing well near the tail end of the season through the first round of the playoffs until he got hurt. This guy is also great off the court. There was a story that I forget what the charitable organization that he leads, but it helps a lot of the youth in the area. So he's impacting, both on the court and off the court. And then obviously, the record comes into play as well. Toronto making the playoffs, becoming the 6th seed, and he definitely had a hand in that. And him, averaging, reading the stats here, 15 points a game, 50% field goal shooting, 30% from 3, and also 7 boards. Those are solid numbers for first year.
So safe to say your Rookie of the Year is my Scotty Barnes?
Sure is.
Moving on to another one that we're all anticipating is MVP. So EJ, I'm going to go to you. Who's your MVP based on these guys? Despite what we're seeing in the playoffs, of course we don't take that into consideration. But who would be your MVP?
Well, definitely not Nikola Jokic. To me, if it's always about stats, Russell Westbrook deserved more MVPs then. He averaged a triple-double for multiple seasons, and he was never awarded for that. So why are we awarding Nikola Jokic for that? And the impact and it is about impact, especially for most valuable player. Basically, this is how you look at it. You take that guy off the team, how well would that team be doing without him, right? So to me, 76ers without Joel Embiid would be nothing, especially when Ben Simmons wasn't playing and they didn't make that trade for James Harden yet. It was Joel Embiid who was shouldering that load for the 76ers. So for me, he's looked impressive. Honestly, I don't think we've ever seen a big guy like this. Joel Embiid has improved tremendously since his first year. He's trusted the process, and that process is about to lead him to an MVP, in my opinion.
Oh my gosh! If he wins MVP plus sweeps us, I don't think I can tolerate Joel Embiid ever again. But PJ, do you agree with Embiid being potentially MVP? Please say no. Please say no.
I actually don't. I follow the EJ same logic in the sense that if you take a certain player off that team, how does that affect the team? And in my opinion, if you take Nikola Jokic off the Denver Nuggets, where are you going to get anything from? At least like with the Sixers, I can name you 3 out of their 5 starting players. I honestly can't do the same for the Denver Nuggets. Like, I don't know who their starting shooting guard is or their starting small forward is, honestly, night in, night out. I feel like I agree in the sense that if you take them off the team, how does that team look? And I feel like the Sixers might get a little bit more wins with the roster that they have as compared to the Nuggets. I don't think the Nuggets would get anywhere near as many wins.
Interesting. And Mike, any love for Giannis for MVP, or he's just out of the question then?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where, he's like, I mean, let's be honest, he's like a top 2 or 3 player in the world now. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, when Michael Jordan was in the league, I mean, you have to give him the MVP every year, but you can't, so it's just one of those things where Giannis is always going to be in the conversation. But, I think honestly, if you were just to throw out all the records out the window, I mean, LeBron should be the MVP. I mean, if you look at the numbers that he's put up at his age and the high level of play he's played at, I mean, the guy is just reverse aging. I mean, he's just like Tom Brady in NFL. I mean, he's still putting up huge numbers at age 37. And though I'm the biggest Laker hater on the show by far, I mean, you have to admit that. I mean, he's still playing at a supremely high level. So with all that said, I would say LeBron. But with these 3, I have to lean towards Embiid for sure.
Interesting. So let's all pretend that we have the coveted vote for these awards that they hand out to media. So I'm going to go through the list with you guys. You tell me who your winners are. So for Coach of the Year, EJ, who do you have?
I got Taylor Jenkins from Memphis.
Interesting. Mike, what about you?
I'm going to go Monty Williams.
Ooh, I like Monty. And PJ?
I actually have Taylor Jenkins as well.
Interesting. Most improved player. EJ, let's start with you.
Jordan Poole, but if we have to pick, from here, I guess I would say Darius Garland.
Plus, he was an all-star, right? This was his year. He was an all-star. Mike, what about you? Who's your most improved?
Jordan Poole, baby. No, I'll go Ja.
Oh, Ja. And then PJ?
Darius Garland.
Interesting. 6th man. I think this one's really interesting. 6th man of the year. EJ, who do you have?
Oof, this is a tough one. I'm surprised Kevin Love's on the list.
Man.
Yeah, I was Kevin Love. Kevin Love's still in the league, dude.
I can't believe Kevin Love's there. But I mean, I like Cam Johnson too. He is a big piece for the Phoenix Suns. Tyler Hero though. I'm gonna have to go Tyler Hero.
Shooter. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to go Tyler Hero.
It's Tyler, isn't it, for you, PJ?
Yeah, you don't even have to
100%. I mean, in a losing effort, he scored 24 points tonight off the bench. It's got to be Tyler.
He's a baller for sure.
Yeah,
and Mike, I'm gonna say Kevin Love for you.
Jordan Poole, baby. No, I'm gonna go. Tyler Hero. No.
And this one I have vested interest, so hopefully you guys all answer the same way. Rookie of the Year, EJ. Who's your rookie?
Okay. For you, Zarita, I'll say Scotty Barnes. But if it weren't for you, I would pick Evan Mobley. I just like Evan Mobley, and I think he's going to be thriving a lot more in years to come.
For sure. PJ, what about you?
I actually picked Cade Cunningham. I use the same logic as like for MVP. If you take him off of the Pistons, what are they? They're nothing. But Scotty Barnes is a nice addition to Toronto.
They're nothing with them. They're nothing with them, dude.
Yeah.
They're nothing with or without him. And then, of course, Defensive Player of the Year. Do you guys agree that Marcus Smart, of these three, should have won it? EJ, I think you said you did agree. Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, you have to give it up to him because he's just, I think, it's just he's been so consistent for years. So he definitely well deserved for sure. And
PJ, what about you?
Definitely. He's the heart and soul of that team, and it starts with his defense.
For sure. One guy that would be so funny to see on here is Pat Bev.
Hey, man, he's a good defender, though. He is a good defender,
but that would make his ego even higher.
Oh yeah.
He could be in every category.
So for me though, one more point. Please stop putting Rudy Gobert on the list. Did you see him get posterized by Dinwiddie? He got posterized.
This series, he's done. Like, he should no longer be after playing the way he's playing.
Yeah, right now. Stop putting him on the list.
Checked out for sure. So maybe one day we'll get the vote when they count media. So we'll see. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to talk some NFL news that Mike touched on earlier. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, sports fans. I'm Zarita Sese. Thanks for sticking with us. So earlier in the show, Mike did give us an update about some NFL news. So the San Francisco 49ers wide receiver has requested for a trade. So like Mike was saying, it's not actually about the money, but rather how the team uses him. So playing both wide receiver and running back, who's taking a lot of hits, that's what brought on the request to be moved. So Mike, in the leagues that we're seeing now, it's very pro player. They can request whatever they ask for. So given the fact that being able to play wide receiver and running back is what makes him so unique, do you agree with his request?
You know, for me, I'm always going to be pro player. But, you know, in his position, I don't really get it. And the reason why I say that is because he's only third year in the league. I mean, you look at the top wide receivers that are getting paid the big bucks. I mean, they've established themselves as premier wide receivers. Devontae Adams has been putting up numbers for at least the last 7 years, has made numerous NFC championship games. You look at Tyreek Hill, won a Super Bowl, has been on one of the top offensive teams for years. And yeah, Debo had an amazing season, but I mean, he's been injury prone. He hasn't been healthy, 100% healthy. And as far as scheme goes, I just don't see any other team that would fit him as, like, I guess you can call him a wide back or a running receiver. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the new term is called, because, and don't get me wrong, I mean, he's absolutely incredible, but because Kyle Shanahan is his personality, he's just very creative in his scheme and the way he coaches. He fits the 49ers philosophy perfectly. So, you know, hopefully they'll be able to come, or actually, I hope they don't come to an agreement, because I do not want him to stay in the NFC West because of the Seahawks. But, you know, just think about it objectively. I just don't really see him with his skill set fitting that wide back position. I don't really see him really fit. The only team I probably would see him fitting in is probably the Packers, just because they're a little bit more creative in their scheme and things like that. But yeah, I just don't really see any home for him right now.
Interesting. EJ, well, one, do you agree with his request? And also, I was going to ask you, what's the best landing spot for him?
Yeah, well, for his request, I'm not surprised by it. I think Terry McLaurin is also in the same boat. I think there's a couple of receivers who are putting their foot down because of the spike of these contracts that these premier receivers are getting, and these guys are getting off of their rookie contracts, and they want their money. So I mean, I understand that they want to make a living for themselves, and that's definitely their right to do so. I'm never a fan of not showing up to team things though. There's a right way to ask for the amount of money you're looking for. So in that stance, I don't agree with it, and I hope that the rumor with Terry McLaurin isn't that he's not going to show up to practice, because that guy's the heart and soul of the Washington Commanders now. But as far as best landing spot, hey, come to Washington, man. I'll be more than happy. But most realistic, I think, though, and who would benefit the most would actually be the Kansas City Chiefs. Letting go of Tyreek Hill, they're missing their number one receiver option now, I think. And who better to fill it with Debo Samuel? I know that they're going to have to take some salary cuts or make some cuts, but they were able to acquire a bunch of draft picks from that Tyreek Hill trade. So for them to use that as trade assets to get Debo Samuel, I think would be beneficial for Kansas City, especially in the AFC where the Bengals are on the rise, the Patriots are on the rise, and I mean, and of course the Buffalo Bills are up there for the AFC, and I don't think that Kansas City can afford to be left behind, especially after that void of now Tyreek Hill missing from their offensive weaponry. I think Debo Samuel would fit right in, and alluding to Mike's comment on creative offenses, Kansas City is one of those places as well. So I think he would also thrive in that environment.
Interesting. And lastly, PJ, what are your thoughts on all of this, and what's the best landing spot for him that you think?
I get his request, especially because of how they use him. Mike alluded to it earlier. Like he takes a lot of damage when you're the running back and the wide receiver, especially at the wide receiver position. You're so exposed, especially in the open field. So I understand like his request and his demand for more money. Like I get that. I understand that you're gonna have to take care of yourself first, because you're not gonna be in this league forever. In regards to teams that I could see him landing with, obviously the number one choice for me would be San Francisco. But outside of San Francisco, I would probably say I agree with EJ with Kansas City. I could also see another NFC rival being the LA Rams. They get pretty creative with their offensive schemes also. Mm-hmm. So I could see them going. I could see him landing in LA if they have the money for it. And just to kind of throw it out there, just because I'm a big Tom Brady fan, why not Tampa Bay? I'm pretty sure they can figure out a way to use him down there. Yeah. So those would be probably my top four places for him.
Interesting. Well, you can't blame a guy for looking out for himself, right? And the longevity of his career. So we'll see how that pans out. But of course, we can't do an EBC show without the question of the episoder of the week. So like EJ reported earlier, this is in light of Ben Simmons finally returning and getting to play an NBA game since June of last year, so almost a year. So that being said, I want to know the panel's favorite comeback story of an athlete. So for me, it's got to be Sean Livingston. After that gruesome injury, didn't see the success of his career until later on with the Golden State Warriors, 3-time champion. That guy is a living legend. So EJ, who do you have for your comeback story?
Yeah, for me, it goes along the lines of that gruesome leg injury, and that's Alex Smith, man. Alex Smith, to me, has always been a great quarterback. That injury was devastating for him and actually also life-threatening. But for him to be able to get back onto the field to play a heavy contact sport such as football at the quarterback position, exposing himself like that, and leading in 2020 the Washington football team at the time to a playoff berth after being horrible in the opening parts of the season. Definitely for me, the greatest comeback story ever. He led us 5-1 as a starter to a playoff berth. And it was very inspirational. Even Dak Prescott acknowledged that he was an inspiration to him getting back onto the field as well.
For sure. How about you, Mike?
I'm going to go with Peyton Manning. Reason being is that, when he was with the Colts, he had that devastating neck injury and everybody was counting him out, and he was on the brink of, I think he was out of the league for like a year and a half to 2 years. And he was able to have a successful surgery, and he came back, and we all know what happened. Went to the Broncos, made it to the Super Bowl, got blown out by us, but made the Super Bowl 2 years later, and they won. So he was able to win on a high note. But neck injuries are always crazy because, especially in the NFL, just one little hit and you're done. You're probably going to get paralyzed. So it was awesome to see him come back, and it was a huge inspiration to see.
For sure. And lastly, PJ, who do you have for your comeback?
For mine was Tyson Fury. He was out of the boxing ring for 925 days. That's a little more than 2 years and 6.5 months. He was battling severe mental illness. He had crazy depression. He was also battling substance abuse and everything like that. But he comes back. He wins the WBC heavyweight championship title, takes it away from Deontay Wilder. He's going to be fighting this Saturday against Dillian White, and this might actually be his last fight. So right now his record is 31 wins, no losses, 1 draw. But if it weren't for that first matchup with Deontay Wilder being a draw and he didn't get knocked down in those final rounds, his record could easily be 32-0 right now. Potentially 33-0 if he wins this Saturday.
Interesting. Oh man, those guys, it's even more inspirational because they go back to the most contact sports, and it's nothing ever happens. But well, that's actually all the time that we have for this week's episode. On behalf of everyone on the panel, we'd like to thank you for joining us, and be sure to tune in again next week. Make sure to visit our website at eaglenews.net and eaglenewslive.com, and watch us on net25.com. Like us on Facebook, and of course, follow us on Twitter at Eagle News to join the conversation. For EBC Sports International, I'm Zarita Sese. We'll see you next time.